Residents in Tucson, Arizona are drawing a line in the desert sand, not one drop of their shrinking water supply for a 290-acre AI data center. Tonight, a first-in-the-nation statewide moratorium sits on a governor's desk. A California county is facing a lawsuit for daring to say no, and a major U.S. power grid just failed its reliability test for the very first time in history. Tucson, Arizona has spent years watching its water supply shrink, and residents are now fighting to keep what's left out of the hands of data center developers. The campaign is called Not One Drop, and its target is Project Blue, a proposed hyperscale facility planned on 290 acres outside the city limits, developed by Beale Infrastructure, a San Francisco company owned by Blue Owl Capital of New York. Tucson's water flows through the Central Arizona Project Canal from the Colorado River, and those flows are already 20% below 20th century averages. Arizona could face water cuts of up to 77% under worst-case projections. On top of that, Tucson Electric Power proposed a 14% rate hike in June 2025, partly to fund grid upgrades needed for data center growth, another cost local residents say they will be forced to absorb. That fight is now spreading well beyond City Hall.
That opposition is now making its way into state houses. And New York just made history. On June 4th, both chambers of the New York State Legislature voted to pass the Responsible Data Center Development Act, a bill that would impose a one-year statewide moratorium on new building permits for hyperscale data centers drawing more than 20 megawatts of power. The Senate approved it 44-16. And the Assembly passed it 102-39, making it the first bill of its kind to clear a state legislature in American history. If Governor Kathy Hochul signs it, it will be the nation's first statewide data center moratorium. But she has not yet announced a position. Industry groups are lobbying hard for a veto, warning the bill would chill billions in planned investment. Environmental and community advocates are equally adamant. New York's grid and its ratepayers simply cannot sustain the load. And the courtroom fights are getting personal. In Imperial County, California, one of the hottest, driest corners of the American Southwest, the Board of Supervisors did something remarkable this month. They reversed course. After unanimously approving a plan for a hyperscale AI data center that would have been the largest in California, nearly 1 million square feet. The supervisors changed their minds under sustained pressure from months of public backlash. They passed a 45-day moratorium and formed an advisory committee to rethink data center zoning from the ground up. But the developer, Imperial Valley Computer Manufacturing LLC, has already moved to challenge the moratorium in court, seeking a temporary restraining order. Their argument: the county had no legal basis for declaring an emergency. This rural desert community's fight over who controls its land is now in the hands of a judge. And the reason this legal and legislative pressure keeps building comes down to one thing: the grid, PJM interconnection. The power network serving 65 million Americans across 13 states just announced something that has never happened in its history. Its capacity auction failed. For the first time ever, the grid came up 6,623 megawatts short of its reliability requirement, meaning it cannot guarantee it will keep the lights on during a severe weather event. Data centers are a primary driver, accounting for 40%, or $6.5 billion, of the record $16.4 billion in total capacity costs. Capacity prices have already risen 833% between the 2024 and 2026 delivery years. Those costs flow directly to residential electricity bills. And with more than 5,000 additional megawatts of data center demand forecast in the next delivery year alone. Grid operators warn the situation is only going to get worse. State legislators are taking notice. In a wave that has swept across 30 state capitals, more than 300 data center-related bills were introduced in just the first 6 weeks of 2026. Targeting energy costs, water use, tax incentives, and zoning. Arizona enacted a 3-year moratorium on its data center sales tax exemption through June 2029, ending a subsidy program that had helped attract billions in investment. Illinois and Ohio took similar action on their own incentive packages. New Jersey Governor Mickey Sherrill unveiled the nation's first comprehensive state data center plan on May 27, requiring facilities to directly pay for their own electricity, disclose power and water consumption, and negotiate formal community benefit agreements with local residents. California, Ohio, and Utah have already enacted ratepayer protection laws that go beyond the federal government's own voluntary pledge. The era of open door, unlimited incentive data center policy in America is closing fast. The pressure on the grid is only half the story. Water tells the other half. USAI data centers consume 264 billion gallons of water in 2025 alone, used primarily for cooling systems in an era when climate change is rapidly shrinking the nation's freshwater supply. The U.S. Drought Monitor reports that 63% of the country is currently experiencing drought conditions, the driest start to a year since 1910. NOAA data shows that 517 of the 809 data center projects currently planned across the United States are sited in areas officially classified as drought-stricken. A single large data center can use hundreds of millions of gallons per year under peak operating conditions. In the water-stressed West, where data center developers are rushing to claim cheap land, the math is becoming politically untenable. Communities that have carefully managed scarce water for generations are now competing directly with hyperscale AI infrastructure for every single drop. Yet despite that wave of resistance, construction is pressing forward. Prime Data Centers broke ground on 3 new buildings at its flagship Avondale campus in the Phoenix Metro on May 21, 2026. The project represents a $3 billion investment and will deliver 240 megawatts of critical IT capacity when complete, making it one of the largest data center campuses in Arizona. The timing is striking. Phoenix sits in Maricopa County, the heart of a state now implementing a 3-year data center tax freeze and facing some of the most severe Colorado River water allocation cuts in the American West. Texas has already officially overtaken Virginia as the nation's top data center market, with Phoenix emerging as a fast-growing secondary hub. That growth is continuing despite water constraints, utility rate pressures, and the legislative headwinds reshaping the industry everywhere else. The momentum on the ground remains extraordinary, and the financial commitment behind that construction is staggering. Private equity investment in U.S. data center deals has hit a 5-year high, according to S&P Global Market Intelligence, driven by voracious AI infrastructure demand that shows no signs of slowing. Blue Owl Capital alone provided more than $50 billion in data center financing in 2025, including a $27 billion commitment for a single Meta campus. KKR has committed approximately $34 billion in equity across 23 separate digital infrastructure investments. The nation's 5 largest hyperscalers, Amazon, Microsoft, Meta, Google, and Apple, are expected to spend $650 billion combined on data centers and supporting infrastructure in 2026, up from roughly $500 billion the year before. Total future lease commitments across the largest cloud providers have now surpassed $850 billion. The capital flowing into this sector is extraordinary by any historical measure. And so, increasingly, is the resistance to it. Thanks for watching. If you found this useful, subscribe, leave a like, and drop a comment. It helps us cover more of these stories.